mic on. Gula ma'am, am I audible? Gula ma'am.
Yes.
Yes,
I'm here.
Okay. We are live now, ma'am, and we can start.
It's 9:30.
It's 9:30. Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Written?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. You can start.
We can start. Okay.
For the introduction. A very good morning to all the dignitaries present here. Auspicious day for us at NFSU, and it is a pleasant task that I've been given here today to welcome all the distinguished guests. And on behalf of our distinguished visionary leader, Padma Shri Professor Dr. J.M. Vyas, I have the honor of welcoming you all to this first International Forensic Victimology Conference. I will also registrar, Mr. C.D. Jadeja. You will be hearing from him later this morning, and our campus director, Dr. Purvi Pokhriyal, who's the campus director of the Gandhinagar campus in Gujarat. So before I go into welcoming you all, let me tell you how important this day is for us and why we think it's a very important day. First and foremost, because this is the first ever forensic victimology conference held in India. And second, it is held in the first forensic science university, not only in India, but also globally. This is the first forensic science university. So we really do take pride in this, and we are really honored to have the opportunity to host this very important conference. And thirdly, I would say that in our attempt to make access to justice a reality, not only for victims of crime, but also for victims of abuse of power, we see that the use of forensic science is crucial to making this a reality. So we have brought together on this platform today the leaders of the World Society of Victimology, which works to advance the causes of victims all over the globe, and scholars and academicians, especially like Professor Brent Turvey, whose book on forensic victimology we have been widely using thus far. So we are really fortunate to have him with us today as a keynote speaker. We also have with us from the World Society of Victimology none other than Professor Janice Joseph, who is a distinguished professor at Stockton University in the US, and she also is the serving president of the World Society of Victimology. So we are very happy to have her with us in this program as well. She will be speaking to us later this morning. And also we have with us Dr. Michael O'Connell, who was the former Secretary General of the World Society of Victimology, and he is now serving as the consultant victimologist in Australia. So he will be delivering the valedictory address as well. So we have tried to bring together this group of forensic scientists. We have Ms. Shraddha speaking to us today. She's a former director of a forensic science laboratory. And we have Dr. Mahalakshmi, who is known for her contribution in the field of DNA. She will also be addressing the gathering today. So we are really looking forward to this program here, and we're really excited about it. So it is my pleasure to welcome all of you to this conference, and we will be having an award as well, because this is one of the first conferences in forensic victimology. We want to encourage the participants by offering this award. We will be declaring the results during the valedictory. There will be three categories. There will be an award for the best paper among the professionals. There would be a best paper award for the scholars in the scholar category, and another best paper award in the student category. So we hope that this would induce others also to research in this fairly new field of victimology as far as forensic victimology is concerned. We know that Professor Brent Turvey has published the first edition many years ago, and we're looking forward to the third edition. He and his co-editor, Dr. Aurelia, will also be with us today. She will also be sharing her thoughts with us. So let me take this opportunity to welcome all the keynote speakers, all the chairpersons, the plenary speakers who I've mentioned just now, and all the other participants as well. So without further ado, we will move on with the program, and a very, very warm welcome to all of you once again. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am, for the brief introduction to the conference and your welcome address. Now I invite Shri Chhatrapal Singh D. Jadeja, the Executive Registrar of NFSU, to give the opening remarks on the conference. Sir has been associated and has worked with the premier education institutes like Nirma University, Ganpat University on important positions. He is an alumnus of Sainik School of Balachaddi and a topper in psychology from Maharaja Sayaji Rao University, Baroda. He began his career as an academician and a researcher, which was when he had the opportunity to work at IIM Ahmedabad in the areas of business policy, organizational behavior, and entrepreneurship. I invite Sir to give his opening remarks on the Forensic Victimology Conference. Please welcome.
Yeah, namaskar and good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the first Forensic Sciences University of the world, of course, India and the world. As you know, this is the only university across the world which caters to various disciplines in different areas of forensics. Especially, we started with the forensic science, but then slowly now we are going into cross forensic sciences areas, like you have forensic psychology, we have clinical psychology, we have cybersecurity, we have digital forensics, we have forensic pharmacy, forensic chemistry, forensic toxicology, forensic DNA, and slowly we have been advancing in the different areas of forensics. And forensic psychology and forensic victimology also are very close by. And I'm very sure that this seminar would go to a great length, and there would be many deliberations on the areas of victimology. And this is a preview, as we will be holding a world conference on forensic victimology in 2024. So I welcome all the delegates in that areas also. So I am very sure that you will have very good discussions for these days, during which these topics are to be deliberated. The several authors and renowned persons are there who will be participating in this workshop, and I'm sure that you would be benefiting by these wisdom on the online program which is being organized by the university. I welcome you all and thank you.
Thank you, sir, for sharing your thoughts on the subject. Now I invite Professor Dr. Purvi Pokhriyal, Director of NFSU Gandhinagar campus, to share her knowledge with us on the need for forensic victimology. I would also like to mention that Dr. Purvi is the founding Dean of School of Law, Forensic Justice and Policy Studies. She specializes in the area of criminal justice studies and justice education. Professor Pokhriyal holds a master's degree in law with specialization in criminal law. She was conferred with Senior Social Scientist Award by the Indian Society of Criminology for a significant contribution to the field of criminology. She was also selected for the Best Law Professor Award by the Business School Affairs and Devang Mehta National Education Awards. We humbly welcome you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. Thank you. So, am I audible?
Yes, we can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. So at the outset, the respected Professor Dr. Bula Shekhar, the Chair Professor Criminology and the Dean in Charge School of Behavioral Sciences, National Forensic Sciences University. I'm so glad to welcome you all and delighted to.
What are you doing?
Purvi ma'am, you're not audible. Purvi ma'am.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am, you're audible now.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am, you're audible.
Yeah. So when I mean to say that we need. Okay, thank you. So we need a greater amount of deliberations amongst all the stakeholders, because the most important aspect of the forensic victimology is that how to look at the whole victim support system in terms of the policy intervention, in terms of the appropriating better provisions in different laws and making the criminal justice delivery system victim centric. And in that regard, it's very important that how do we develop the scientific outlook and how do we keep aside our biases. So the implicit and explicit biases that is something which we have to do away when it comes to any segment working with the victim in the area of victimology. Could it be police, investigating officers, public prosecutors, policymakers, and how do we develop that kind of an scientific outlook is very, very important. With the help of all of you, with the help of the President, Dr. Janice Joseph, and the other office bearers, Dr. Bula Shekhar is leading that particular initiative in terms of designing a very exclusive course on forensic victimology, which National Forensic Sciences University is quite committed to offer to all the stakeholders involved in this particular victim support segment. Because if I analyze the laws with the Indian perspectives, we have been observing that we have been talking about the accused rights. So more or less, the victim is getting lost in the entire justice delivery system. Of course, if you look at some of the provisions of the progressive legislations like POCSO, wherein the victims of course, because here the victim is a child, so the guardian of the victim is being considered in terms of providing certain information at each stage of trial. Probably as a part of the policy intervention, National Forensic Sciences University is quite committed to propose this kind of amendments in the CRPC and bringing these aspects of victim centricity in the mainstream justice delivery system by having an appropriate amendment, maybe in section 164, maybe under section 207 of CRPC. And this is how probably we try to mainstreaming the victim-centric approach in the justice delivery system. I'm so glad to learn that somewhere around in 2009, when Nilima Singh versus State of Punjab, for the first time, the Supreme Court had asked that when we talk about the fair trial and the fair investigation, this is not only applicable to the accused rights, but it is also equally fair on the part of the victims. So victim is required to be provided with all kind of an information at each stage of trial, because fair trial and fair investigation is something which is also a right of a victims, because as we all know that at times there is a greater disconnect between the public prosecutors and victims, and generally the public prosecutors at times are not adequately sensitized with the issues, the trauma, the psychological needs that the victim might have undergone, might have been undergoing. And in that regard, it's very important that this kind of an initiative, having the discussions around forensic victimology and identify the issues that all the stakeholders that are required to sit together and ponder upon, and probably carve out some amount of directions for the policymakers to implement. I'm so glad on that the School of Forensic Psychology and the Delhi campus and of National Forensic Sciences University is being able to chart on this, is able to initiate this discussions, which is largely seen as an uncharted territory in the area of victimology. So I look forward to welcome all of you on the campus, and look forward to hearing all of you, and wishing all the speakers and the esteemed keynote speakers and the participants all the best for this conference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, ma'am. That was very insightful. Thank you for throwing light on the need of developing a scientific temper in the field of forensic victimology. Now I invite Professor Dr. S.O. Junare, Director of Lok Nayak Jayaprakash Narayan, National Institute of Criminology and Forensic Science, NFSU Delhi campus, to talk on the role of the NFSU in promoting forensic victimology. Professor Dr. S.O. Junare is a forensic accountant and behavioral economist, combining insights from fraudology, economics, and psychology to improve decision-making in organizations and society, often with a gender or cross-cultural perspective. He is also shouldering responsibilities as campus director at National Forensic Sciences University Delhi campus, and is responsible for all the aspects of the university's teaching missions, and works on a broad range of academic and faculty issues, including academic learning, curriculum, strengthening learning, and teaching excellence and educational technology. I humbly welcome you, sir, to deliver your opening remarks on the Forensic Victimology Conference.
I'm sorry if Kirtika and Ritin did not get the information that Dr. Junero will not be joining us today. So on his behalf, I will say a few words about the role of NFSU. He is abroad signing an MOU with another university, so he will not be able to join us today. So yes, the role of NFSU, we see that we are fortunate now. We just learned in Spain that NFSU has won the bid to organize the next World Society of Victimology Symposium in 2024. So these series of conferences and workshops that we propose to conduct is actually leading to that conference, the symposium that we're all looking forward to, with the theme Forensic Victimology. So this is exactly what we are trying to do at the National Forensic Science University. With the team we have here, we are initiating this series of programs because mostly because it is a new unexplored area and we need to get people interested and initiate some research and writing of papers in journals and other media as well, and talk about forensic victimology, trying to introduce it to the whole country as such, with special focus on the law groups and the criminology and the victimology societies that we have in the victimology societies that we have in India as well. So this is what National Forensic Science University's plans to do, not only through the Gandhinagar campus where it's headquartered, but also through the other various campuses that we are opening around the country. Even as we speak, there are talks going on about new campuses around the country. We have campuses in Pune, in Goa, in Tripura, in Bhopal, and we are expanding. And by 2024, we would have a lot of areas that we have already covered and where we will again be introducing the topic of forensic victimology. And we have the guidance of our dynamic leader, Professor Vyas, who is an expert and who has been awarded many laurels for this contribution to this field. So we are fortunate and we are really excited and we are looking forward to this journey. Inform you that Professor Vyas is also inaugurating another conference even as we speak. He will be joining us. So maybe if we could introduce Dr. Brent Turvey and have his address, Professor Vyas will join us shortly. Thank you.
Now, I welcome our two most renowned speakers in the field of forensic victimology, Brent E. Turvey and Dr. Aurelio Coronado, to give the keynote speech. Professor Brent E. Turvey is the Director of Forensic Criminology Institute, USA. He is also a forensic scientist and a criminologist. He has been performing caseworks as a forensic scientist, criminal reconstructionist, forensic criminologist, and criminals profiler for law enforcement agencies and attorney-client all over the world. He has also worked on caseloads of femicides, which are focused on the implementation of the United Nations Model Protocol for Femicide Investigation in Latin America with Forensic Criminology Institute. He has been a forensic expert in various criminal and civil cases in the state and federal court. Along with this, he has also worked on major cases as a forensic consultant. He has been a peer reviewer for professional journals, publishers, and organizations. He has almost over 76 publications. Dr. Brent Turvey, please.
Good evening. Can you hear me all right?
Yes, we can hear you.
You can. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. I'm Dr. Brent Turvey, and I'm here with my good friend, co-author, and colleague, Dr. Aurelio Coronado, who is a forensic psychologist who helps me navigate these issues. He's here to make sure I don't say anything stupid, which is almost guaranteed to happen.
Man.
All right. So, I want to share my screen here real quick.
That's the one.
Right here?
Send now.
Entire screen?
Entire screen. Okay.
Okay.
Sure we have any other option?
Allow. All right. So let's talk about what I want to do. Oh, it's going to share my screen, which is the screen. This is very weird. How do I do it so I can just see my presentation and see the...
Right. That will be impossible.
Right. That will be impossible. Okay. So let's talk about recent advances that we've made in forensic victimology. It's pretty uncomplicated. For those who do not know who I am, go look me up. Whenever you have somebody who's lecturing to you on any subject, I encourage you, you should go Google them. You should look them up. Look up their publications, look up their education, look up their affiliations. You should be doing that with me right now if you don't know who I am. I've written quite a few textbooks. In fact, we just published a new one. It's called Criminal Psychology. And inside of criminal psychology, Aurelio and I, Dr. Coronado and I, actually advance the area of forensic victimology significantly for the purposes of addressing issues that are related to the concepts we're going to talk about in our casework. All right. So I write, I teach. We actually have a master's program in criminal profiling and forensic criminology that's fully accredited here in Latin America. And we also do quite a bit of casework. I have cases all over the United States, about 30 open cases in the US. And Dr. Coronado and I maintain a caseload in Latin America as well. And we're going to share one of those cases with you today. I got started working in Latin America because of the reference that was made to me by the United Nations in their model protocol for femicide investigation. That's because they have a very big problem of femicide in Latin America, elsewhere in the world, but a very big problem in Latin America of women being killed for reasons related to their gender. And this caused the United Nations to step in, develop this protocol for investigations, which referenced some of my work, and now is mandatory for use in every criminal investigation conducted in Mexico, and is regarded as the final word in sort of investigating victimological evidence and information to help resolve cases. Do you want to say something about that really quickly?
In Latin America, we have a very, very big problem with gender-related violence.
Yep.
And one of the biggest problems we have, of course, is the way that our investigators understand gender crimes and how they conduct their investigations. So basically what you're seeing in the screen, this model for protocols, is a very important document that gives the standards, gives the concepts, and gives guidelines so you can do a proper investigation when you're dealing crimes like this. And some of the work of Brent Turvey was used to create these protocols. That's how I know this guy.
We actually met the lady from Cuba who wrote the protocols, and she's way smarter than both of us.
Yeah.
She's actually really great. All right, so we're going to borrow from that a little bit as we talk about this subject. So I think the most important thing to do before we get into anything is to define what forensic victimology actually is. This is the scientific examination and study of victims for the purpose of victim information for the purposes of addressing investigative and forensic issues. It involves skeptical investigation of the facts and a thorough examination of all related evidence. And by all, we mean not just the victim themselves and their traits and characteristics, but their relationship to the offender and their relationship to the space that the violence occurred in. This is something really important to understand. You cannot separate violence from history or context. These are all super important victimological traits and characteristics. So, and the other thing is, there's this notion, I think too often among other criminal justice professionals, that forensic victimology is not something that's relevant to their work and not something that they even do. And they're pretending very hard to be doing work that's super specialized and requires super knowledge that they don't actually have and they're not actually doing. Because if they actually read any of the literature or read any of their own protocols for their agencies, they'd realize that they're required to collect victim evidence and information all the time. One of the big examples I like to give is in the medical examiner. They're not allowed to actually render a cause and manner of death unless they have completed the decedent profile information. It's very clearly established in their different protocols that they have that they can't do anything in terms of interpreting the cause and manner of death unless they have certain victim background information like past surgery, the existence of scars, the existence of broken bones that have healed, or the existence of disease. And most importantly, toxicology. What drugs were they taking? You have to do that's why it takes the medical examiner's autopsy about 3 weeks to come back, even at the most rapid speed. It's because you can do the autopsy in an hour and you can type up the findings maybe that day or the next, but until you have the toxicology, which takes at least 3 weeks, you don't know if there wasn't some influence on their behavior or their state of mind or their state of consciousness.
Or the crime scene report.
Yeah. But too often what happens is forensic scientists who are meant to follow such protocols skip that step. So we're gonna talk about this new thing in forensic victimology where people read their protocols and they follow them. Because that's something that's not happening, I guarantee you, in just about every context. Everybody thinks it's just their agency or just their country.
Yeah.
It's not. It's everywhere. Everybody everywhere is faking doing their work.
Here in Latin America, we have this impression that, in United States, they're doing it. Series like Criminal Minds or Bones or
That's right.
CSI. We watch those series here in Mexico, and we believe, no, Americans are doing it. The FBI and all these guys. And then I start working in the United States
That's
because
right.
this guy invited me, and we realized very quickly that that's not the truth at all.
One of the first things I do when I'm examining and evaluating a case is I learn the protocols of all the people involved. For example, forensic nurses are very bad for this. What they'd like to do is they think their job is to protect the victim from scrutiny or from bad things. So they'll actually collect evidence and information relating to their mental illness, relating to their drug use, relating to their level of intoxication, and they will hide it, or they will suppress it, or they will otherwise obscure it. This is tampering with evidence, in fact, and forensic nurses get in trouble for it all the time, it's a very big problem. So it's not just about the science and the protocols and what you're supposed to do. It's about the ethics of the examiner, what they believe their role is. So there are a lot of people who are required to collect and document this information, but too often they take a view that their job is to protect the victim's reputation from from scrutiny or from the truth.
Yeah, or just to see the part what they're telling to watch. They're not watching the whole picture. They're just watching what they're telling to watch.
They go into a very criminological or diagnostic mode where they're just trying to look at one thing, do a checklist, and they don't get to know the victim at all. They don't get to know who they are. They don't get to understand what trauma they've experienced, their history, their context. They really don't take the time. They're just doing a very bureaucratic administrative approach to victimology. And that makes the victim as a human being invisible to them. And what we do is called forensic victimology, forensic examination with a human rights perspective. Because every single forensic examiner is a human rights defender, or should be. What do I mean by that? Well, if you are a forensic examiner, you are required to show and demonstrate your capability, your competence by virtue of due diligence. Due diligence means you are well educated and trained. It means you know what your protocols are. It means you understand the literature in the scientific community related to your work. And it means that you apply that to your casework, your analysis, and to setting limits on your findings. That's due diligence. If you do not have due diligence, what that means is due process cannot occur.
Yeah.
Due process refers to the legal requirement in the courtroom that everybody does their job well and justly and with as little bias as possible. That's what due process requirement is. And in the United States, the due process requirement is built into our Constitution. If you are not doing your due diligence by following protocols and being competent, then you are denying access to justice by avoiding due process. And you are violating the victim's rights and the offender's rights, and you're violating the purpose of the court. You want to talk about that just a little bit?
That's
pretty
in
important.
Latin America, we have the same. It's part of the Constitution, but also it's part of the international agreements we have, like, for instance, agreement related to try to combat gender violence. So what we need to do, or what we're supposed to do, is like every crime, every violent crime of a woman should be investigated should be investigated with due diligence. And the problem we have in Latin America and the problem we're seeing in the United States is that not every crime is investigated as the same.
Some crimes aren't investigated at all. In fact, we work a lot of cases that are where the victim is made invisible and the crime itself is made invisible because it's hidden as a suicide.
Yes, exactly.
A lot of femicides are hidden as suicide. A lot of staged crime scenes. The problem is staged crime scenes. That's a thing. But the greater issue is investigative apathy, negligence, or just plain idiocy. The people in charge of actually conducting the investigations lack the training, the knowledge, the language, the education, the basic fundamental core tools that they need to actually conduct a criminal investigation. This is why we find in many of our cases that instead of investigating the crime, what the police will spend their time doing is attacking the victim's family and making the police don't talk to the police, don't say this, don't say that. And if they start talking to the police, if they start talking to the press, rather, they start talking to the public, they go after them. They get them for crime.
And the aggressor knew this.
Yes.
That's why the aggressor targeted the victim,
We're gonna
because they knew exactly what will happen when you target these type of portable victims.
And we're going to talk about that.
Yeah.
That's actually a pretty important concept. So, I don't know who's got their volume on, but I can hear somebody walking around and doing doors. If everybody wants to mute, that'd be great. If not, I can hear you. All right, so this is right from the femicide protocols. It's called the ecological model of victimology.
Yeah.
All right, so basically, I feel like I'm in somebody's kitchen. What's going on? Who's doing that? Who's doing that?
No, it's over.
Yeah, it's over. Okay, good. All right, so let's talk about this concept here. The notion is that it's not enough to simply look at the victim and their individual traits, their hair color, their mental illnesses, their height, their weight. All these things are very important.
Yeah.
These are important physical traits, and also just who they are as a person, their likes, their habits, their music, their books,
Yeah.
right? What kind of car they
Their
got,
mental disease, their mental illness, whatever.
their education level,
Yeah.
where they work, who their friends are. That's pretty important.
Yeah.
But a person does not exist as an island in the world. That is not how most people exist. Most people exist as part of they have relationships, they live in a community, and they're connected to society in one way or the other. So the first thing is, you do have to get that information about who that victim is as a person, right? Their individual traits, their individual characteristics, physical, mental, criminal history, psychiatric history, job related, all that stuff. That's very important. Where they live, and that's going to be important in a second. The next thing is, who are the people that they have relationships with? What's their family relationships? Who are their intimate partners, past and present? What's the power dynamic? This is the most important one here. When you're thinking about, in terms of forensic victimology, in terms of establishing who a victim is, it's not enough to just say, okay, they have these relationships, they have a mother and father. Okay, everything's all good now. No. You're required to figure out the power the power structure of their relationships. Who has power over them, and who do they have power over? Who can exercise economic violence against them, and who can they exercise economic violence against? Sometimes the answer is never known, and that's one of the big lessons I want to impart here as well. We do not conduct nomothetic examinations. We don't look at the group. We're not looking at averages. We don't care about that. When you're examining a case in a forensic context, when you're examining a case, you're required to do it like a doctor examining a patient. This is idiographically. You're looking at this patient, this victim in this case, with these relationships in this community, and their relationship to society.
Yes.
You have to establish all those things. Talk about that.
So forensic victimology, we think, is a qualitative science, and also have a historical approach, because if we think in the rest of this ecological model, we can see the other dimensions, the community dimensions, and also the cultural dimensions. And those are also idiographic. I mean, we're not going to say things like, oh, they live in a dangerous neighborhood, or they live in this part of the city where bad things happen. No, we need to do analysis, and that's what we call context analysis,
Exactly.
where we see what are the problems, social problems, economical problems, but also, of course, problems related to crime. So we can do this context analysis and this specific analysis with the victim, both with idiographic approach.
Yeah. Idiographic means, again, case-based.
Case-based.
We're looking just at this case. We're not trying to make an average or talk about averages. That's really a waste of time. It's
Not organized, not the organized.
Yeah, none of that nonsense. We
No.
don't do that. So the next thing is, in those relationships, you establish the power dynamics of the relationships to find out where the danger is coming from, or where the vulnerability is coming from. And then the next part is the community, where they live. Where they live in terms of what's the poverty level? Do they have running water? Do they have electricity? Is the area that they're in high crime, or is there a lot of unemployment? For example, I live in a very nice building on a main street where right now it's 11:30 at night, but you can still run into families on the street.
Yes.
It's a fairly safe neighborhood, very friendly, very low crime in general, right next to a main park with a lot of restaurants. All right, that's not the same for everybody. I mean, if you go into the hills surrounding Bogota, where we do a lot of work, there is a super amount of poverty, a lot of undocumented people, a lot of immigrants from Venezuela who got trapped there during the pandemic that are treated like a slave class. And so the community is quite diverse, with one group exercising power over another quite a bit, right?
We can go to Las Vegas.
Oh yeah, go to Las
and have the
Vegas.
same.
You go to Las Vegas, you can have the same exact
Yeah.
experience, right? Or I can go back to my hometown of Sitka, Alaska, with the fish processing plants, where you have Eastern European and Filipinos working in the fish processing plant who don't speak English, and they take a lot of methamphetamine, and they get paid, per hour, so they work double, triple shifts. And the rest of the community, the white community, sort of enjoys that, while the Native American community is deprived of even
Yes.
the most basic access to their resources. So you have the immigrant population, you have the white population, and then you have the indigenous community, and they are three completely separate communities with very different power structures and dynamics, and they have a very different sense of community depending on who's there. In fact, we did a forensic residency program this last year, and one of our police officer students from Dubai helped. She participated in the program, and she helped evaluate a femicide of an indigenous woman on a small island in a small town about 40 miles from my hometown. This very horrible rape homicide, and she made the point that this was a conflict zone.
Yes.
This was actually a conflict zone, and a conflict zone means that, well, you know what I'll do? I'll just pull it up right here. What's the name of the case? The name of the case is, everybody can see my screen, I hope.
Yes.
Turvey reports. This is going to be Isaac. Where's this guy? Isaac Friday. The case is Isaac Friday. Alaska versus Isaac Friday. Let me pull this up real quick. Friday. Go to, let me see if I have it in my cases right here. Just give me 1 second. I'll have it for you. There we go. Active cases, Alaska versus Isaac Friday. Here we go. Turvey report. Just like I said. Okay. So we go to, this is the case. It involves a young girl named Jade Dia Williams. She's 19-year-old female native. She is drunk all the time. She has a huge substance abuse problem, as do many of the indigenous natives in Alaska. And we made sure to put this in here because it's actually pretty important. Basically, the idea is that the place that she lives is called, we do a contextual vulnerability analysis. She's part of a protected group, Alaskan Native, also female. Those are two big intersectional groups. And she has a history of domestic abuse. Her father choked her a bunch and beat her a bunch. She had a history recent of a miscarriage. Where you have to actually travel to another part of the state 1,000 miles away to actually get your health care, because it's free to natives, but it's not always local. History of drug and alcohol abuse, abusive relationship with the defendant. And then she was at a social gathering where she was almost 3 times the legal limit in terms of being drunk, and she was fighting everybody, and everybody else there was drunk as well. So you have a context of abuse, a context of violence, a context of alcoholism, a context of all this stuff, but then that's just her. Then, if we look at her community, the community of Cake, Alaska, it's actually what's referred to as a conflict zone. This is a place where, how do I put this? It's a place where how do I put this? It's a place where it doesn't have all the resources it should.
And where the human rights
There you go.
are still on dispute.
That's right. So human rights are in dispute. You don't have good access to water. You don't have electricity.
Yeah.
You don't
have protections.
They actually don't have law enforcement on
They
site.
don't have a health system.
They don't have a health system, and they don't have law enforcement there. When she died, law enforcement had to wait 4 days until the weather cleared to come out and investigate the crime scene. So in terms of a conflict zone, this is the definition of one. So when you're looking at somebody's victimology, it's not enough to establish who they are and what relationships they have in the power dynamics. Where do they live? And what kind of access do they have to food? What kind of access do they have to healthcare, to protection of law enforcement, to the courts, to everything? All that kind of stuff matters in terms of establishing their relationship to the community. And then finally, we have society. What's their place in society? And I know that in India, you have the same thing we have in the United States, which is a very clear caste system. You guys draw it out more clearly. In the United States, we pretend that we don't have a class system.
Same Latin America.
But we do. And it's based on one thing, and that is the color of your skin in the United States. The color of your skin, and to a lesser extent, your money.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, we all have these things. It's not just India, it's the United States. We just mask it. And in Mexico, they have it as well. Other nations as well, by exclusion. So what is your relationship to the society that you live in? Are you one of the people who is fairly complected and wealthy and has access and agency? Or are you the one of the people who's the more darker colored skin, who is experiencing racism, experiencing poverty, and is not regarded well by the people around you? Well, I can tell you right now, in terms of the Friday case, you're dealing with somebody who's actually a native, right? That's the first thing we put in there, Alaskan Native. Why? Because Alaskan Natives were made illegal. Their culture was made illegal in the United States. They actually shipped them to government schools to cut their hair, make them dress the right way, rob them of their language, of their culture, forbid them from drinking, forbid them from hunting and fishing at different times when that's when they've done their whole for generations, right? So this idea that, oh, there's all this equality and it's all working out, that's make-believe. And
Yes.
the question, we have a responsibility, and this is an important thing to get. We have a responsibility to actually be honest about what's going on in the communities and context that we're looking at, and not hide information about relationships and individuals because they don't fit our narrative. The most dangerous thing that you're going to encounter when doing this work is the certain belief that you are a good person doing good things. That belief is very dangerous because it's extremely condescending, and also it's extremely privileged. That's not how it works. How it works very often is the more education that you have, the more privilege that you have, the more agency you have, the more distant you are from understanding precisely what elements of vulnerability other people suffer, because they're suffering it from you.
That's why the approach we're having is
Yes.
about perspectives,
Yes.
to include different perspectives to
That's right.
the assessments.
That one of the most eye-opening things is to actually be able to sit with people who are at different levels in society and see the distance between you and them and respect it, and not give them the space and give them the dignity that other spaces and perspectives don't allow them to have. That's really what it's about. So we have to acknowledge these different societal groups and how they're treated by the government, by other groups, and within a community,
Yes.
and within a relationship, and what the individual's relationship to those things were. So it could, for example, right now we're having a big problem. We've had a big problem. We're having a big social media campaign against the morality police that are patrolling in Iran and have in all parts of the Middle East, have these, where they're looking for people that are stepping out of line, women who are not wearing the hijab or letting their hair be uncovered. What it really is older men going around and policing younger women, or women that they know are vulnerable, so that they can protect their sexual access to them. They're making it because the result of this is that they attack them physically, they attack them sexually, and the community, oh, this is so great. In India, you have the same thing. You have honor killings. You have the same problem. Where, by the way, the United States has just as bad things. We have this in Latin America as well. But in India, you have a problem of honor killings, where the more humiliation, damage, and violence you inflict on the person who has dishonored the family by stepping out of their traditional role and using Instagram or taking pictures that are provocative or what have you, the more you do, the more you restore honor to your family. There's nothing more disturbing than that. That's the most disturbing thing I've ever heard. I mean, it's horrible. So the reality is, every society has this on some level.
Yes,
And
of course.
we in the United States, we are just as guilty of that.
Femicide is exactly the concept we're using
Yeah.
in our legal system to actually try to talk in these terms, so we can not only have reparations for the family, for the victims,
That's right.
but also to have a message to the whole society, because this is a problem of how we perceive the power dynamics between people that we perceive as different than us.
That's right. And this here's the one thing I want to caution you against. Get this idea out of your head that everybody's equal. That is the most privileged, wealthy, classist statement you can ever make. Everybody is not equal. And by saying everybody's but nobody read it. And so only in the last 10 years has it really sort of come back into the spotlight because of the racial problems that we're having in the United States. She was originally trying to explain or trying to understand how the vulnerability of Black women was different than the vulnerability of white women, or in employment contexts. Long story short, but what intersectionality says is that there is a social and political impact in terms of reduced agency and reduced privilege and reduced ability in a society when you have intersecting identities. For example, maybe you are of lower class, maybe you're from the wrong nationality, maybe you have a marginalized sexual orientation, maybe your gender is a second-class citizen in the country, or your race, or disabilities, exactly, abilities and disabilities.